ACC Challenge Tuesday, we'll have Duke taking on Michigan State at 9:30 Eastern. Wednesday, Ohio State squares off against North Carolina, a pair of sonic blockbusters on ESPN and the app.
Arguably the game of the year in the NFL, the Niners and the Ravens.
The 25th touchdown pass of the season for Lamar Jackson. Another touchdown for Lamar Jackson. Stiff arms a man, touchdown. We're tied at 14, 4th and 1. The Ravens turn them over on downs. It is good!
Big trust.
The Ravens have made it 8 consecutive wins.
And what could be a Super Bowl preview, the Ravens and 49ers faced off yesterday with Lamar Jackson leading Baltimore to a 2017 win. Action Jackson living up to the name, throwing and passing for over 100 yards, including a touchdown on the ground and in the air. Jimmy G threw for 165 yards and a TD in the loss. Ryan Clark back here with us. Stephen A.
Yes.
Did you learn more about Lamar Jackson or Jimmy Garoppolo yesterday?
Well, to me, it was Lamar Jackson only from the standpoint that, engaging in ball control, understanding that it was going to be a tight, relatively low-scoring nail-biter, and responding in the manner in which he did, putting the ball in his hands. He had a turnover early in the game, and he kept pounding his chest point to himself. It was on him. When he turned the football over, he got stripped. He knew that that was something that could not happen, and he was quick to hold himself accountable in that regard. And those kind of things go a long way towards, you elevating your level of leadership with this franchise. Well, I said this before, and I'll say it again. When it comes to the San Francisco 49ers, I know that Jimmy G is no scrub. I know that he can play, but I think of a multitude of layers before I even get to him. I think about their defensive line. I think about their secondary. On the offensive side of the ball, I think about their running game, and I think about their coach and his play-calling ability. That's before I even think about Jimmy Garoppolo. When it comes to the Baltimore Ravens, the first and last thought I have is Lamar Jackson. That's the difference.
I agree, but that's why I learned a little more about Jimmy G. I mean, how much are you really going to learn in a regular season game? And we said it, the San Francisco 49ers, it's, 10 a.m. their time biologically, right? Because they're on the East Coast and they played well and everything. But Lamar Jackson is one of those guys where physically you know what he can do, including the accuracy of his down-the-field passing game. Like when you look at what he did as a 21-year-old, most accurate passer who ever lived, 22, he's more accurate than he was at 21. And we know he can run, obviously. Yeah, we learned that with the game on the line, because he hasn't been in a whole lot of close ones recently, he can make clutch plays too. That's a little more evidence that he's this great MVP player. The thing about Jimmy G, and the reason I learned a little bit more about him maybe than Lamar Jackson yesterday, is that there are some guys who can't physically do what Lamar Jackson or Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes, those guys, or even guys like Carson Wentz is capable of a lot physically. And with those guys, it's not so much like they need extra credit. I'll leave Wentz out of it. They need extra credit for leadership or for being the kind of guy who can make a big play with the game on the line. There are some players who need that extra credit, for us to really believe in them, because their stats otherwise and their play otherwise are more pedestrian than the superstars. Jimmy G was not that kind of player actually yesterday. That's why I get on Baker Mayfield. I felt like Baker was the kind of guy who could make that happen. When he doesn't, I'm like, oh, if you don't have that, then you really are just pedestrian. Dak Prescott, too. When Dak is not doing that stuff, it's like, well, okay, now we're just going to judge you talent for talent. Jimmy G, there were pivotal moments. It's still a game. He did not run the offense smoothly enough. Even that touchdown pass, a 50-50 ball, he chucked it up there. He got lucky, which is, sometimes you got to do that. You have to have that quality in you to take the shot. But there were points late in the game, especially where I'm like, come on, Jimmy G, if you're accurate there, if you hand the ball off, if you run that play more smoothly, you'll pick up positive yards. You'll get more out of that play. And he didn't do it. And that stuff is less important for a guy like Lamar Jackson or a Patrick Mahomes or an Aaron Rodgers who can do everything than a guy like Jimmy G who needs that stuff to be considered a franchise quarterback.
Ryan, I'd like to spin this forward with you if you don't mind. Both of these guys believe this could be a potential Super Bowl preview. If these two teams were to face off again in Miami, who do you give the advantage to?
The Baltimore Ravens, and I give it to the Baltimore Ravens for the same conversation that we're having. And I felt what I feel about Jimmy G. I believe that he's a solid quarterback. I believe that in Kyle Shanahan's offense with this amazing defense, that he is going to win a lot of games because a lot of times he won't lose the game for you. And we've actually seen him make some plays down the stretch to win some games. If you go back to the Arizona Cardinals, and we've seen him make a big play against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but when you look at yesterday, Lamar Jackson needed this. You're listening to Max talk about players who necessarily don't need that extra credit for us to give them the nod or for us to say that they're special. Lamar needed this extra credit. Lamar needed to make some throws late in the game. Lamar needed a 12-play, 6-minute and 28-second drive where he was the prime decision maker. He was the prime ball handler for every single play. Everything that was done on the last drive for the Baltimore Ravens was about Lamar Jackson. And we needed that because a lot of people pointed to the games that they were winning, especially recently, were blowouts. He didn't necessarily have to come from behind. He didn't necessarily have to make clutch throws. We haven't seen him bounce back from adversity like the fumble that was forced on him and recovered by the same player. And so we see all of these things, and then we see Lamar Jackson come out and win the game. And it wasn't just about his legs. It was about his heart. It was about his mind. It was about the way that he led a team, about the way a team followed him. And I've been saying this for a long time this year. I really listened to what people say in post-game press conferences. Obviously, I work, late on Sunday and Monday, so I get to watch these things. And when you hear Jim Harbaugh and when you hear Mark Ingram and all of these people, John Harbaugh, talk about Lamar Jackson, it's about his competitiveness. It's about what he did the entire offseason to become a better passer. It's about the way that he works. And a lot of times, these are things we attribute, and these are intangibles we focus on for less talented people. Whenever we talk about Drew Brees or when we talk about Tom Brady, we want to talk about all of these intangibles that make them more special people than the quarterbacks that they play against. At some point, we got to start giving Lamar Jackson this. We got to start talking about his intelligence.
Ryan, I think he got that credit. His teammates obviously love him. He's played very smart this season, and he was even smart for a 21-year-old last season. I agree with your point that coming from behind is important because if they can, you're not going to be able a lot of times to run your way back. You have to make accurate passes, on first down, particularly if you're behind in the game. And he did that. But Lamar Jackson's a sensational quarterback. He's an MVP with or without that stuff. And the fact that he has it, kudos. Jimmy G needs that stuff. If he doesn't have that, then he's just a game manager.
But do you think, Max, here's my question to you. Jimmy G needs it so we can talk about him in that manner, or maybe so he can just live up to the contract that he's received. But do you believe Jimmy G's that guy? Because I don't. I've said all season, I believe that Jimmy G is on this team to make sure that they don't lose, and he is good enough to keep them there.
I think he is that guy. I think that's why they're 5-0 with him. He gets hurt. They're the worst team in the league. He comes back. They're 10-2. I
have a question for Stephen A. Stephen A., I know how highly you think of Lamar Jackson, but are you confident he can do that again against this Niners defense?
I think he can, because I think he'd be more formidable in better weather. And I think the thing that you have to pay attention to, and I'm with Ryan, I've never been sold on Jimmy G. You know that.
Yeah.
I love the name Poor Star Jimmy. I think it's entirely appropriate. He deserves it, and it's not an insult. But having said all of that, I want to say this. Jimmy G, if you look at him throw the football, there's a lot of times when you look at Breida or you look at Mostert, you look at Kittle, Deebo Samuel. I mean, this brother can ball. We see Emmanuel Sanders. That's been a big pickup, etc. You look at people around him doing things. There are times when he makes a play, and you know what you say to yourself? Damn, what a great call by Kyle Shanahan. Not a great play by Jimmy G. And then we look at Lamar Jackson, and we marvel at the improvement in his throwing ability from last year to this year. And then we look at the Baltimore Ravens. They have the #1 rushing attack in football. He is the leading rusher for the team. He's got 977 yards rushing in 12 games. I decided to look up Jimmy G's numbers running the football. I said, just running the football. You know what Jimmy G's numbers are? 36 rushes, 46 yards. He ain't going nowhere. He's a stationary target for the most part, okay? He might dance a little bit in the pocket, but he's a relatively stationary target. So if you're going to be that kind of guy, we need to see Drew Brees. We need to see Tom Brady. We need to see Kenny Stabler from back in the old days. We need to see somebody like that. If you're not going to move And you're just going to be standing in the pocket flinging the football. I need to see you throw it better than he has. Whereas with Lamar Jackson, I'm looking at a dude, the ball is in his hands, and it doesn't matter what he does. John Harbaugh has said, take us there. I don't see Kyle Shanahan saying
I don't think, but Ryan, I don't think, see, my point is I don't need to see Drew Brees out of Jimmy G.
No, and
I need to see a game manager who can come through under pressure in those kind of close games.
No,
and in the moment of truth, he didn't.
That was the point I was going to
though.
make. Even in watching Jimmy G, I do believe he's made enough plays throughout this season in some of the moments that this team can still win a Super Bowl. And I don't necessarily believe you can say that about every quarterback in this league on every team, but Jimmy G and the San Francisco 49ers have that chance, and he's made enough of those plays. I just don't believe when it comes between guys like these two that he will outplay Lamar in those moments.
And that's what it's going to come down to, Ryan. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
When you're talking about a Super Bowl championship on the line, you're going to run against those guys. I didn't bring up Drew Brees and Tom Brady to be literal. I'm speaking about them metaphorically. Excuse me, when you sit up there and you're a stationary target, you need to be able to pick a defense apart. Kyle Shanahan is the one we give credit to when we see Garoppolo do stuff.
Lamar
That's
Jackson.
usually not the case.
I'd like to see what Lamar would do against the Patriots again, though, with the second time against that defense. I know what happened last time. I know, for sure.
Sean Payton is a damn good coach. But when we see Drew Brees do something, we say that's Drew Brees, not Sean Payton. See the difference?
True story. The two contenders for the NFC East crown look more like pretenders. Find out why neither are the most disappointing team this season. More First Take after the break.
We're back Tuesday with another huge First Take for a reaction to the big Monday Night Football matchup.